All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Well, one of the persons I really enjoy and have had on the Adult in the Room podcast before, it is Sam Faddis. He's a former CIA, he's retired CIA spook. He led the team into Iraq in advance of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. He's been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I didn't realize that he was the CIA's counterterrorism center. And he's also a former JAG. I did not know that either. So I imagine that a guy like Sam Faddis might have something to do and say to those who would, on the seditious six bunch, when they say, well, you know what? These guys, they should go talk to their JAG officer before they take an order. How are you, by the way? Thanks for coming back on.
I'm doing well. I try to hide that whole JAG thing. That the fact that I'm a lawyer is the real skeleton in my closet. The CIA thing's not a big deal.
That's why I was surprised. I'm like, what's a lawyer doing in the CIA? Well, it's a good thing, though. I mean, gives you some idea of. You were a prosecutor? Were you a federal prosecutor?
When I spent most of my time as a JAG officer, actually as a defense counsel, defending those who defended America.
That's great.
That was a busy time.
Yeah, it was.
That convinced me to hang up criminal law, being a defense attorney. So I walked.
Why? Because you lost your faith in humanity?
No, because I won a lot of cases for a lot of guys who should have gone to prison, and I was tired of carrying that baggage around. So
I've heard that before from people. After
Yes.
a long period of time, I've heard that from defense attorneys before. And other defense attorneys go, I don't defend these dirt balls. I defend the Constitution.
Yeah, well, you have to. Your ethical obligations are clear, but the point is, at the end of the day, you're like, okay, that dude should have gone to prison for a very long time, and he just walked in. I don't want to be carrying that baggage anymore. So, but
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well, and then you went to the CIA and you wrote a book. I'll find your book and I'll put it up when I find it in my library of photos. And you've written several books, actually. But so what I wanted to talk to you about was our shooter. But since I discovered that you had this skeleton in your closet, I wanted to find out what you would think of a representative or a senator who urged a senator, maybe former astronaut senator, who urged soldiers and airmen and Marines to, go see a JAG officer if you think something's hinky, because, that Trump, he's a dirtbag and we don't want him to be giving orders because, everything he does is illegal.
Yeah, well, look, what do they call them now? A seditious six or something like
The
that?
seditious six, yes.
Yeah, look, it really irresponsible, and that's not strong enough. I mean, reprehensible, right? I mean, and what they said technically is they just stated the law, which is
Right.
if you're given an illegal order, you don't carry it out. Okay, I mean, if you've captured a prisoner and he's under control and somebody tells you to put a gun to his head and pull the trigger and kill him, that's a clear illegal order, and no, you shouldn't follow it. But everybody already knows that, and the military follows those rules, and all these guys are always taught that. And obviously the real issue is the implication in what they said was that the president and his men and women are giving illegal orders, even though they cannot provide any evidence of such. So, the unstated lie here is that there are such illegal orders being given.
Right, exactly.
But what really rubs me the wrong way as a guy who, I came from a military family. I've been in the military. I've been around the military my whole life. Is you're potentially jamming up guys in uniform, right? Because in the military, if you do not comply with the lawful order, you can be court-martialed and sent to prison for that. It's not a democracy. The captain tells you to do something, you don't get to say, I need to go consult my counsel before I do that. If you don't comply, you can go to prison. So, some guy watching this video decides, oh my God, we're being told to do illegal things and doesn't comply. Well, the seditious six are not coming to his rescue when they send him off to the stockade, when they screw him over for this. It's, again, at best irresponsible, but really inexcusable. I mean, they know exactly what they were doing, and somebody, and whether they should be prosecuted for that or not is another issue. They should be disgusted with themselves, ashamed of themselves. There's no defense for it.
Yeah. The guy who, I was gonna do a follow up on that, and I just don't know that the state of Oregon. I just wrote a story yesterday, and I was having fun with it. Okay, because you could do that at PJ Media. We all have opinions.
Sure.
And so I did it. I did the old dipsy doodle, and I said, well, obviously that Trump and Pete Hegseth are doing the right thing by wanting the National Guard in the state of Oregon and sending ICE in to do their thing, because clearly even though they say they're going to do something, they're shaking their fists at these guys. They have not offered any proof that any laws have been broken. They're just bringing up the specter of the law breaking and trying to shake their fist at them and say, we're going to punish you if you do. Well, guess what? Nobody gave any example of any law broken whatsoever. So I said, hey, they say they're doing everything right. So I had a little fun with that. And
well, that's the thing. They make these accusations. They have no evidence. I mean, they've been confronted about it and said, okay, so this is a big problem, right? So you must have lots of examples of all these illegal things that these guys have been told to do, and yet none of them have been able to come up with a single such example. It really, it's more of this attitude, I think, of just eating away at the republic, at respect for the law. It's sort of, we're just going to take this fight to the streets. We're going to make wild accusations. We're going to encourage people to break the law. At the end of the day, in all of this is the part where you lose the republic. You know what I mean? You've decided to do anything the ends justify the means. And when you're all done, you're like, okay, well, you've burned the system down now. Like, stop, be grown-ups here.
Right.
You don't like the man's policies that's in the White House. Okay, fine. Then there's a mechanism. Stay within the confines of the law. Get people elected who have different ideas. Let's play by the rules. If we don't, in the end, we all lose, right? We got no country left.
Now, MJ wrote in and said what the seditious six did was seed doubt in the minds of the military. That's not a good thing. Then also wrote, and it's very strange that one of the activated Manchurian candidates from Afghanistan went and murdered 2 National Guard soldiers in D.C. And furthermore, he says that person went and did the crime with a 357, I guess. I didn't hear that it was a 357, but fine. In broad daylight, yet they were trained for clandestine warfare. Okay, question. Who is this guy and what unit was he in the CIA? And why did he do that?
So this guy was a member of one of several units that existed in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They were run by the Central Intelligence Agency, if you will, in cooperation with the Afghan intelligence organization. But I mean, we created that. Okay, so this is a thing that is funded by, directed by, run by USG, by the Central Intelligence Agency. And the way that works is there are paramilitary officers within CIA, ground branch guys, typically referred to. These are always guys that came out of military special ops of one variety or another. CIA doesn't send people to boot camp; they go hire. the guy who's been doing this for 20 years from SEAL Team 6 or what. And these guys are embedded, so our guys, these ground branch guys, train the Afghans, and they run the missions and they direct this, and the Afghans in practice are working for them. What was this guy's job? What's the unit's job? To hunt down and kill and capture Taliban, and with a primary focus on leadership. So find intelligence, find out who's the Taliban commander in such and such an area, and then these teams go and find this guy and either bring him in to be questioned, capture him, not request to come in, or they kill him, whatever they were told to do, but that's what they did. This guy was part of that operation for years. And then when Afghanistan was turned over to the Taliban by Joe Biden, he and lots of other guys from these units were brought to the United States because obviously their life expectancy would not be particularly long if they stayed. As far as I can tell, having brought this guy to the United States with his family, and I've seen this goes for all the rest of it, we more or less just dumped them at various locations around the country.
It kind of sounds like that.
And then we largely washed our hands of them. I mean, they were relocated, and ultimately this guy was set up and put in an apartment with his family, but there was no real continuing contact. And CIA certainly appears to have completely washed their hands of these guys. So again, I don't want anybody to misinterpret this. I'm not making excuses for this guy. He's a murderer. He should be tried, convicted, and executed as far as I'm concerned. But from a standpoint of taking care of ourselves, it's not a real smart thing to bring hundreds of these guys to the States,
no doubt,
dump them all over the country, and then basically break off contact and leave them defend for themselves. In fact, I can tell you that CIA has brought people into this country like this for decades because we end up in a situation where a guy was helping us overseas, and all of a sudden he's got to get out of Dodge because the bad guys are looking for him. Yep. And one of the things that CIA has known for a very long time is that you cannot bring these people to the States and just dump them and forget about them, because a lot of times they don't do very well. They basically implode and they fall apart. And to begin with, you're concerned if it's a Russian and you brought him in, or he used to work for us in Moscow, and he gets all torqued off, he's going to go back to Moscow and go back to work for the other side and tell them everything that he knows from our side. So the policy used to be you keep in contact with these guys, you monitor them, and you intervene as necessary to keep them squared away. Apparently, we don't do that anymore. So we just left this guy to implode. And if you read the stuff about like the community social workers and neighbors who were left dealing with this guy, 2 years ago, it was clear they were talking about him being suicidal, sitting in a dark room for days with the blinds pulled, getting in a car, driving to Chicago, getting in a car, drive. This guy was falling apart at least 2 years ago. And nobody did anything. Nobody intervened. So now we have this horrible tragedy. And obviously my question is, where the heck are the rest of these guys? Like, he wasn't the only. We brought hundreds of these guys here. We just saw one of them fell apart and killed and shot 2 National Guardsmen. One of them's dead. The other one may make it. But what about the other several hundred of these guys? Is anybody planning on changing the plan now, checking on them? Or are we just going to wait till the next guy kills somebody?
Well, we have a list of Afghans who have done this, who have been here. And I read it. Daniel Greenfield wrote about it in, and he, it was just chapter and verse. Oh, and then by the way, I'd forgotten about the election terror attack that was supposed to happen in 2024. He's in the prison now, that guy. And then politicians and media have claimed that Afghan guards and soldiers like Ramanullah and Nasir were heroes and allies who protected their soldiers. Here's the thing. And like I say, long list of these crimes done by these Afghan nationals who came to the United States and now lay in wait for some opportunity, if in fact that's their choice. But now check this out. So Joe Kent, who's in charge of the Counterterrorism Center, as I think you used to be too, didn't you?
I worked in CIA, CTC, but I know
Oh, gotcha.
Joe. I know Joe very well.
Oh, yeah, excellent. Okay, he's a good guy, right?
Very good guy.
I wish he'd made it into Congress, but I'm happy with his role here.
Yes.
Here's what he said. The barbaric terrorist attack by the Afghan terrorists spurred righteous outrage over Biden administration's policy of importing people hostile to our nation. Yes, but on the other hand, the Trump administration gave him refugee status, apparently. But it was born of this disastrous Afghan withdrawal. But what Joe says is the vetting. It is true, she said, it's in the second paragraph thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's true that the terrorist who conducted the attack in D.C. was vetted by the intelligence community. However, he was only vetted to serve as a soldier to fight against the Taliban, AQ, and ISIS in Afghanistan. He was not vetted for his suitability to come to America and live among us as a neighbor, integrate into our communities, or eventually become an American citizen. Why didn't that happen?
Yeah, well, I don't think there was any vetting for any of them. I mean, first of all, I agree with everything that Joe said, not surprisingly, because he's a very squared away guy. But here's the thing, right? We're talking about this guy, Lockenwall. He's one of the guys from CIA units.
Yeah.
These units the CIA ran.
The Zero units or something, right? Is that what they call them?
They are referred to by a variety of names, some of which are classified, whatever. They're the CIA. The CIA units, we know what their purpose was. They were vetted in the sense of, we don't want these guys talking to the Taliban. If we're going to go kick in somebody's door tonight and try to grab a Taliban leader, we can't have a snitch here talking to the Taliban.
Right.
But Joe's 100% right. None of that has anything to do with what's going to happen if we take this guy and just dump him in the United States in an apartment working. I think he was working as a contract Amazon delivery guy.
Yeah. It's
But
a little different than kicking indoors.
Yeah, and of course he's now into him a completely alien culture, which he has no preparation for, no experience in. But these guys are actually the good case, because as sad as that is, because there's a whole bunch more Afghans that Biden's just said, we don't even really know who the hell you are, but sure, get on a plane and come to America. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands more that never worked for us, that we have no records on. And by the way, I was having this conversation earlier today with somebody. You talk about vetting an Afghan. What the heck does that mean? Like, you're in a country, most of which is still in the 12th century, where there are no databases and there are no records. And really, legitimately, you're talking to a guy, he may not even know his real birth date, right? Because there's no record of it. And the village he's from appears on no map, right? It's not, what do you people talk about vetting as if you're going to go to the magic computer and type something in and it's going to give you this all-seeing view. You're like, you know what the computer's going to tell you? Nobody has any records on this guy. Nobody ever heard of him before. So your guess is as good as mine as to whether he's a really good guy or a Taliban assassin or just he's crazy. There's no record, because no records exist for most of them.
Yeah. Now, do you ever, I hesitate to say this on the air, but I mean, do you ever pay attention to Sarah Adams, who is looking at some of these bad actors, such as the people chasing down the people who did Abbygate and that sort of thing?
Mhm.
And I just kind of wonder, she believes, and I imagine that there are others who believe this as well, that there are a lot of people in our country who've come over on those planes or across the border or what have you, who are sitting around waiting to do an act of terrorism.
Yeah,
Do
well,
you
I
have
think you
any?
should. Well, I think everybody should be very worried about that. But here, somebody was asking me again earlier today, so how many such terrorists do you think are in the country? And I think there was some lady who says she used to be in the CIA, who claims that there are 1,000 Al Qaeda operatives here or something.
Uh-huh.
And my response is, there might be 1,000, there might be hundreds. You want to know what the really terrifying aspect is? Nobody knows, and nobody is trying to find out. So you can speculate, you can throw out numbers, but the reality is we're not trying to get our arms around that, and we haven't been. So, for instance, right now, there's a whole bunch of FBI guys out in Washington State interviewing everybody, whoever came into contact with the guy who already shot 2 National Guardsmen in DC. Okay. That's what law enforcement does. They investigate crimes that have already occurred. But what Intel's supposed to do is prevent the crime from occurring in the first place. They're supposed to be they're not the ones who investigate the fact that 9/11 occurred. They're supposed to stop 9/11 from ever happening. They're supposed to stop these things from happening. And that's the real failure here, is nobody's doing that. Nope. All these Afghans have flooded in. The border was wide open forever. Okay, most of the people who walked across the southern border are from Central America, and they're looking for a better life. That's not me saying they should stay. That's just me saying that's
Sure.
the deal. But once the door is wide open, you don't have any idea who came in. Chinese operatives, Al Qaeda operatives, ISIS operatives. So there is no ongoing effort to now find out who they are, where they went. So we're sitting around waiting for the next attack. And keep in mind that, not to be the depressing guy that I sometimes end up being, but it's with all sympathy for the 2 National Guards people who were shot.
Mm.
The next terrorist attack could be one heck of a lot worse than a guy shooting 2 people, right? I mean, we've experienced an attack where almost 3,000 people died on our soil at 9/11. So
Yeah.
this does not have to just be something that is limited in scale. Again, with all respect for the families of the people
Mhm.
that were shot here, not minimizing that at all. But when when you don't have your arms around this problem, you don't have any idea how bad it's going to get.
This is the video of Abbey Gate, what happened at Abbey Gate.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you've got dillweeds making decisions like, oh, I know, let's get out of Bagram and then have to use the Kabul airport to get out. I mean, that's just insanity, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
it's completely insane. Bagram is a massive base, and completely controlled, and gave us a security presence and capacity to fly in as many troops and deploy as many military assets as we wanted, and provide whatever support was required for that evacuation. And in fact, the military began that planning for that with the assumption that that would be the case. And as I understand it, 18th Airborne Corps down at Fort Bragg was way down in the weeds on making that plan when the Biden administration told them, we're not doing that. If you've ever been to Kabul, and the airstrip that they use to get out of there, the airport is down in a valley surrounded by high ground. The only miracle is that is anybody made it out of there alive, to be honest with you. I thought,
I think that's Jake Sullivan. And Jake Sullivan was the guy in charge of all that. And Jake Sullivan was Hillary's right hand and Joe
Right.
Biden's national security advisor. And Jake Sullivan is married to one of the seditious 6.
Yeah.
He's Maggie, what's her name? Not his last name. And I honestly, this is the moment where these guys they're too close, obviously, to the bombing at Abbey Gate. And it's making a decision like that and then putting his wife up to perhaps making that ridiculous, was she a former CIA intelligence person? I mean, it's just too neat, isn't it, Sam? It's just too close.
Well,
Neat.
it's very incestuous and it's very ugly. And I got to tell you, there's a special place in hell for people that put our men and women in uniform in harm's way and then do not allow them to do what is required to come home safely, right? You don't do that. If you're not prepared to allow them to do what they need to do, then don't put them in that situation. You don't put them in that situation and then say, and start tying their hands behind their back. And of course, what you know is that none of these people who make these decisions have ever been in those situations. They never themselves put any skin in the game. And by the way, their kids and their families don't have anything to do with that, right? I mean,
Sure.
I live in small town Pennsylvania these days. The first row of parking spots in front of every Home Depot and big box store is reserved for Purple Heart recipients because there's that many guys and gals that are around here who came home broken from these wars. You don't see that in Bethesda or Silver Spring or any of those neighborhoods around Washington, D.C. You ever notice that?
No.
You don't see any Marine Corps flags flying on front porches. They're all big on putting people on getting involved in these things and then don't themselves ever plan on taking any risks.
Well, if they have that, I mean, I've noticed that there are some people in the state of Oregon who have told me that I fly a Trump flag, for example, American flag, Trump flag, and he's got nothing but death threats from Antifa nutballs.
I have no doubt that is true.
I don't doubt it either.
Yeah.
Well, what are we supposed to learn from this, Sam Faddis?
What we're supposed to learn from this is we need to demand that it change. And I think we're really at a critical juncture in that, not to shift gears on you, but, people sent Donald Trump to Washington and they really want a revolution.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about killing people, but I mean, they want a political revolution. They really want to throw the bastards out and overturn the apple cart. Let's break some China. Let's shake things up. I think people in general do not, unfortunately, feel like they have seen that revolution yet. So
10 months.
We need it desperately.
So what do we need to do in that revolution, Sam Faddis?
Well, look, let me grab a hold of just a piece. CIA, just since I know it best. Ratcliffe, this is not an attack on him personally, the director, should have fired everybody on the top floor of the headquarters building the first day he walked in there, the first minute of the first day. I'm not talking about admin assistants and so forth, obviously. I mean, all of the top folks in that organization should have been told their services were not required at day one. Put your stuff in that box, security will escort you out. The game is over. The status quo no longer exists. And then we'll go from and that's literally the first minute. We're going to go from there. That's not the end of anything. That's the beginning. And the same thing needs to happen at the Bureau. Again, I'm not attacking Cash, but
everybody else is right now.
Well, I mean, right now, the reality is that CIA, FBI, whatever agency you want to talk about, they exist today in essentially precisely the same form they existed under Joe Biden. So there have been no mass firings. There has been no major change, unfortunately.
Seriously?
I wish that were not true.
John Ratcliffe has not fired anybody from like the 7th floor yet? That's it? He hasn't done that?
No.
Oh, holy shinola.
So you have Ratcliffe. You have Ratcliffe and his deputy, who were appointed by Ratcliffe and his deputy, who were appointed by Trump, sit in offices on the 7th floor, and outside of the doors of those offices, the entire organization worldwide exists as it was when he walked in the door. So you think about the implications of that. Most of the people who are in senior positions now were brought up, put into those positions, and promoted under Joe Biden, under Obama, under John Brennan, under this whole regime. So there's a lot of years there where the entire leadership at the senior levels has become people put into those positions who were politically put into those positions by the other side, for lack of a better way to summarize, and they remain in power today. So look, CIA is a relatively small organization when it comes to the federal government, but it's still a big place, and all the leadership below the director is all the same old folks. Look, at FBI, unfortunately, it's the same.
Yeah.
FBI is what, slightly over 40,000 people. I think there have been 2 or 3 senior guys who have left. Other than that, it's the same bureau. So you can't expect change if you don't begin there.
Oh man, that just sucks. That's super bad. I saw, oh God, what is Andrew McCabe on probably MSNBC or something today, and just quickly, I heard him say about this shooter of the National Guards persons that, oh, he said at least 2 or 3 things that I knew were wrong, and I thought, well, what's he still doing there? What's the guy who lied, who was cut loose because he was a liar? What's he doing on that station? And then furthermore, is he doing just giving misinformation? Some of it was good, I'm not going to lie, but it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and understand that if we're talking about collection of intelligence domestically, in other words, who are the guys who are supposed to go out and find these terrorist cells on U.S. soil and stop them from doing something?
Yeah.
That's actually not CIA. CIA hopefully will bring information from overseas and hand it to somebody that will help. But the FBI is the domestic counterintelligence organization. So all of this finding bad guys on U.S. soil stuff, that's the Bureau. That's not just practically, by law, that's the Bureau.
I like the idea of just tossing people out if they don't like us. Bye.
I'm all for that. We should toss people out at CIA, and we should throw a whole bunch of these people we've allowed to come into the country out. Yeah.
Mass house cleaning for the United States of America. Sam Faddis, thank you so much for coming on. And where do we get in touch with you, Mr. Faddis? How do we find your
the easiest way to find me is to go to the magazine that my wife and I and some other former intel guys run online, and the magazine, andmagazine.substack.com. And that'll take you to everywhere else we are.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good talking to you again.
Great talking to you too. And let's do it again. I pray that we can.